Good morning, good evening, and good night, Galaxy. I am your host, JohnyChainsaw, joined by my co-host, AZPotato68. Today's a very special day because this episode's going to be on alliance dynamics. We have a few guests joining us today from some of the largest alliances on server 22, one of the top alliances of server 34, and another player who was instrumental in building some of the largest alliances on server 2. So we're going to have a pretty awesome discussion today. I'd just like to take this moment right now and introduce my co-host, AZPotato68. Hey, Potato, are you very excited about this show today?
Yeah, this is going to be one of our best, I think, so far. To talk about alliance dynamics and what it means to be part of an alliance, and hear from some of the strongest leaders out there who have been around for a long time doing what they do. I'm really excited to hear from the entire team.
Yeah, definitely. And to introduce our first guest, he's from server 22. He's currently a Commodore in the alliance CAZ, that's CAZZ. And that's WildWazoo. Joining us, Wazoo. If you want to just take a moment and, tell a little bit about yourself, maybe why did you download this game, and are you just a huge Star Trek fan?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Yes, I've been a long-time Star Trek fan. Back from when I was a youngin'. I used to watch it on network TV when I was growing up. And why download the game? Because I was looking for something to do when I was, over Christmas break once, and saw this on the ads. I downloaded it, and I've been blowing up red triangles ever since.
Well, awesome, and thank you for joining us. Second, we have Crashem. He's an alliance leader from MRFM, and they're alliance on server 34. They're top 3 in just about every category, either 1, 2, or 3 in power destroyed, resources rated, or what am I missing? Resources rated, power. Yeah. So Crashem, if you want to just take a second, introduce yourself to the rest of what made you download this
Yes,
game.
hi, this is Crashem here. I'm a sort of long-time MMO player, and I have been a semi-Star Trek fan, but I've watched most of the shows and love it. But I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having me.
Well, awesome. Well, we're excited to hear about your thoughts on alliances, and especially from the server 34 dynamic that you have going on. And finally, our last guest today is NotYourStar. He is the alliance leader of my alliance from server 22. That's JLP. He's one of the alliance leaders for the largest alliance on our server. Hey, NotYourStar. It's nice to finally get a voice behind your infamous name. If you want to just take a second, introduce yourself to the Galaxy, and are you a big Star Trek fan, and what made you download this game?
Hey, nice to be here. So, yeah, I pretty much downloaded the game probably how most everybody downloads the game out of boredom. So, and it's Star Trek, so it's kind of a win-win.
Well, awesome. Well, we appreciate to have you here. So, to start off this discussion, obviously, the three of you have been a part of building some of the largest alliances on your server. Now, I'm going to start this question off for Crashem. What was the driving factor to say, hey, I want to be an alliance leader, and not only did I want to have an alliance, I wanted to have a competitive alliance?
Hey, Johnny, we just lost, we got Crashem back. And so, Crash, I don't know if you heard that question, but just what motivated you to start your alliance and build it?
Well, MFRM was started by me and another guy. Right when I think both of us were starting on the server. The server was probably, I don't know, maybe already 6 months old, maybe a little bit older. So I just think that we decided that we wanted to have a place for everyone to to sort of gather and to gather a good group of people to play with?
Yeah, so
was it sort of initial thing?
yeah, and I want to kind of ask Potato too, because for your alt account, you're on server 34 and you're in Crashem's alliance. What has your experiences been being in that alliance, and just talking a little bit about the leadership you've seen from that alliance?
It's been excellent. So I joined that server and made an alt account just to go relive the storyline. And I reached out to the largest alliance, which Inchoate is the leader of, and we had him on a previous episode, and said, which is the best alliance to join? Which are the kind of classy players with the right reputation? And the immediate response was, go join Men Are From Mars, right? MRFM, because their leader is really good. And it turns out that's absolutely true, right? A lot of knowledge, a lot of diverse players at a very wide range of levels that work well together. So really good experience so far.
Yeah. So now I want to kind of ask NotYourStar. I want to ask you the same question, because it's pretty rare for any person in this game to have stuck with one alliance from the day they joined the server until now, which we're talking almost a year and a half later. I want to talk a little bit about how you were able to gain control of JLP and what has been the driving factor to make that competitive alliance.
Well, it was kind of a fluke with the JLP. It was the first alliance that I had joined in the launch day of server 22. So the original leader, he was in the military, and so he wasn't around very much. So it kind of fell to me and Oli to kind of get things going and, make sure that everything ran good. And, we just basically made it for a place that wants to come and play and to deal with all the, all the political stuff about it, where you basically win. So.
Yeah, well, I definitely appreciate making that alliance, because that's where I've made a home. Now, when it comes to building alliances, WildWazoo, I know you have been a big part of creating some of the largest alliances on server 22. What has been your strategy for recruiting and filling some of those spots to really get those big active players into your alliance?
When it comes to recruiting, it's not really about getting the big players as much as it is getting the active players and kind of bringing them into the way you play. I've always found that the kind of the culture you develop in the alliance has been very, very important in developing players, but also getting all players kind of working towards a common goal when it comes to event participation and working together for raiding, working together for mining. And so when you're recruiting a player, you kind of look for initially players that kind of fit the same mindset or role you're trying to get in with through them. But once you're established and once you're getting the top 10 of events, and once you're kind of making a name for yourself, then you get people to start asking for you. And at that point, you switching to, hey, does this person fit into what we want to do?
Yeah, and I could definitely understand that. For Crashem, for you being on server 34, what's been the dynamic for you for recruiting? Do you find it tough having to recruit against? And you could explain a little bit about your server, that you do have a very large alliance with some really strong players. Has that been difficult for you to recruit players, or have you not really found that as an issue?
From our perspective, I want to say the last comments I completely agree with. But I think it really depends on your goals of your alliance. So, I mean, in the past, I've been mostly in whatever game I have played in what you call like the Power Alliance, right? Or one of those. And in this game, I decided to do things a little bit differently. So for us, we're more of built alliance versus an assembled alliance. If you can see the difference, assembled alliance would be like alliance where you bring together the top players for whatever reason, or try to do that. Where built alliances would be, you're trying to build up your players and grow over time. And so MFRM is more of a built alliance than a assembled alliance. And so as a result, recruiting has actually been pretty easy because we're not necessarily looking for the top players.
Sure. And now, NotYourStar, I'm going to have you answer the same question, because I know for JLP, you might want to just kind of tell the Galaxy a little bit of why JLP is different right now, and how has your recruiting been?
Yeah, I mean, we're a lot different than a lot of the other alliances because, for one, not having a row of any sort other than what the individual player deems for themselves, how they want to play. If they want to, adapt some sort of row, they're free to do that without somebody telling them and trying to micromanage how they actually play, far as, you have to do this or this, you're going to get. So that's basically how we're different from a lot of the other alliances that, are a lot more stricter in that regard. And so a lot of times the recruiting is pretty easy because we get a lot of people that are coming from, other alliances who had stricter rules and rows and naps and all this other stuff that, people end up getting tired of, because that takes away from them playing the game and how they want to progress. So that's basically kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
So NotYourStar, I kind of have a follow-up to that, right? You've managed somehow under kind of intense pressure and hate mail to keep this alliance or group of alliances together that lots of people on the server, on your server, just don't like, right? So there's a lot of pressure and hatred and other stuff, but it seems somehow to have this longevity that surprises people. Why?
I think it, it's the attitude. It's the attitude of the players. They have a choice. They have freedom to do whatever they want to do. I mean, people play the game for a lot of different reasons. A lot of people, it's the escape from their real life, or, they as a chapter, also is different. And you have that whole of, different reasons. And so when a player pursue reasons, I think a lot more.
Hey, NotYourStar, we're going to have you pause for a second, only because you're breaking up a little bit. It's okay. So maybe I'll toss the question over to WildWazoo. What's the difference? Because, the alliances you've been instrumental in starting and leading have some pretty clear rules up front, and those have developed over time. But why have you not developed an alliance or built one that follows that kind of NotYourStar model of do anything you want to do?
I think the big reason for that is the kind of players we attract are the ones that are a lot more casual players. They're not like maybe the really super driven. They're going there, they want to work on this a little bit in breaks during work. And so what ROE does is basically you're messaging to other alliances how you want to be treated. We'll treat you this way. This is how we want to be treated. If you don't treat us this way, we'll take other actions. What ROE is basically diplomacy. And, this is how you present yourself to everyone else. We have players who want to be able to mine, get their dailies done, be able to hunt hostiles, get their dailies done. And that's where we go.
So Crash, any input that you have on kind of that topic between the two other leaders?
Sure. I'd say that generally speaking, I've seen it in this game, sort of the fight between row, not row, territorial, all the sorts of ways of putting it out. But I think that the point of most players want something predictable around something like mining, which is a challenge for everyone at different points in the game. It's important. So I have a lot of respect for people like who are non-row, huge power destroyed alliances, but I will sit down and crush them.
I'm sorry, that's not possible. I haven't been crushed yet.
I got 500 relocation tokens. I'll follow you.
Yeah. So that kind of brings up, so obviously being an alliance, you get the benefit of alliance rewards, and you can't talk about alliance rewards without talking about events. Now, Potato, I just want to real quickly ask you, because currently the current event going on as we're recording this podcast is the Crucible of War event. You are currently in a one-man alliance, and you are somehow the number one alliance for this event, even though we have some pretty decent-sized alliances on this server. Now, are you getting a lot of pressure from other alliances saying, hey, come join us? Because I want to, and we're going to open this up to all the alliances. How important are alliance event rewards to you? But Potato, I'm going to let you take this.
You know what? I've been very fortunate over the time I've played to be part of really big alliances that win a lot of the rewards and win events. And I'll just give credit to both Crash and WildWazoo on that of having me as part of those alliances. So that's helped. But I've also gotten to a point where I can be competitive in an alliance or competitive in an event on my own. And that's not normal on server 22, but server 34, it would be a completely different animal, right? So it's just about being active in the game and go out and playing. But, alliance rewards matter, right? They really are a game changer in what you get from resources, what you get from alliance points, and the ability to buy shields. All that stuff really matters. Alliances are maybe one of the most important parts of the game that you have to make sure that you remain part of and active in. And I think that's what Waz and Crash and NotYourStar kind of allude to is if you want to compete, they've got to recruit not big players, but they've got to recruit active players. And that's what makes a difference.
So I'm going to swing this question over to NotYourStar too. So NotYourStar, I know JLP doesn't have any kind of requirements when it comes to event participation. Now, have you found that to be a struggle at all with some of your maybe larger players who either have or considered leaving JLP because they do want those event rewards? Like, what has that dynamic been like for you and JLP?
That dynamic, it's kind of up and down. I think a lot of people want to play events, but I also think the way that the structure of a lot of the events that they run all the time is really off-putting to a lot of players because, for the most part, if you want to do good in advance, most events are pay to play. So, you have to buy the ships, you have to, upgrade stuff, you have to spend, money on building up to be able to do all these events. And I think, a lot of people either don't want to or can't do that. And so I think, scoring and all that, it's just real skewed within the event.
Sure. And now, WildWazoo, I know Kaz has been built around being a competitive alliance and being in events. Now, do you think NotYourStar is correct when saying that, or do you think it's maybe a combination of something else?
Well, there are some events that do a lot better if you've paid money to buy ships or spent a lot of money on your ships, but there's a lot of these events that's purely driven by participation. Battle for Glory is a great example where you just need to get people on and destroying ships. Both Kaz and CAZZ both have a large number of free-to-play players. And event rewards are one of those things that is actually quite essential for free-to-play players to advance relatively quickly. It's one of those things, if you have a lot of free-to-play players, you almost need to be a top 10 alliance to be viable, because if you're anything below that, you don't get enough alliance credits for people to stay shielded all the time. And so events participation and trying to get that top 10 events is actually very important the more free-to-play players you have.
So how do you balance that? And maybe the question is kind of open for anybody, but you know, you've got an alliance, you're a leader of an alliance at a Commodore or Admiral level, and you're trying to motivate people, but you've got a combination of people who are pay to play or pay to win or free to play. How do you balance that for the good of the whole, especially when you get into those alliances that have 70 plus players in it, right? What's the balance point, and how do you manage it as a leader?
Yeah, so I definitely like to hear Crashem's opinion on this, because he is an alliance leader, and a little bit of like what Potatoes was saying, what is the effort that it takes? Are you actually looking at people's stats now that you can go into the alliance tab and view their participation?
This is Crashem here. Yes. So I have screenshots of most events. Whether or not I review them, it depends on my time, but I do. And we look at who's participating, who's not. High participation is required. It's hard. We also have a lot of free-to-play players. I think it's, as an alliance, it's important for you to set your standards, whatever those standards are, and sort of what environment you want, and to be realistic of, where you're at. So, for example, because we have so many free-to-play players, we can't ever compete with a pure power alliance like in our server, where it's mostly you have most of the sort of bigger spenders are there and a higher thing. But we're still ranking 2, 3, whatever. So high participation is a key thing. I mean, if someone else had a different alliance, they had different goals, maybe they are more tailored to the casual player. And then as a result, they have to sort of internally sort of manage that expectation of all the players of where they should be at and what is sort of winning to them.
Sure, definitely. And you can't talk about level of effort when it comes to either alliance leaders or Commodores without talking about the white noise complaints, or, the true complaints of violation of alliance's policies. Now, NotYourStar, as a alliance leader of JLP, which is an alliance that quote unquote doesn't have an ROE, even though there's a lot of players that do follow it, how many private messages have you gotten in game for people complaining about your alliance?
Literally billions. I mean, it's insane amount of PMs that you get, that I get on a daily basis.
Now, what are those PMs like? Are they just people complaining about empty miner hits, or is it just a combination of everything?
It's really a combination of everything. I mean, there's empty miner hits. There's somebody raided my base. There's they didn't have to hit my base 30 times, or a big one is I got hit over cargo, but I didn't get a warning message for 5-10 minutes, or whatever their individual alliance row is. They try to extend that. Well, we didn't get what our rules are. Well, your rules are your rules, our rules are our rules. We don't tell you how to try to play. We don't expect you to try to tell us how to play, kind of deal. And so it's just a mix of just everything.
Yeah, sure. So WildWazoo, as a Commodore for Kaz, do you see a lot of PMs coming in with people either complaining or? Oh, I think we lost WildWazoo. Crashem, I'll ask you the same question. Are you spending a lot of your time dealing with PMs?
It depends on the day, but yes. I have some certain techniques to funnel the real complaints versus the white noises, as you called it. But yes, a lot of complaints.
Sure. Now, Potato, when you were in an alliance, you would kind of go do your own thing once in a while. How was your dynamic with the alliance leaders at the time? Messages about you.
Well, up and down, meaning I'd go off the rails once in a while, right? And as one of the larger players in any of the alliances that I've been in, it had an impact on the rest of the alliance, and there was kind of this kind of undertone of from the rest of the excuse me, leadership about, I'm helping them win events, but the stuff that I was doing had repercussions on the rest of the team. And so the rest of the leadership had to figure out how to deal with that. And we had some pretty open discussions. But it would be similar, kind of in like in Crashem's case, where we have some big players, but if one of those biggest players on that team totally went off the rails, right? If Stinkhoon decided to just go start wiping systems, well, hell, it's a big impact to the entire team, partly from his reputation and what he does in the game, and partly from what he brings to the table when it comes to events like mining and insights and some of the other ones where we place higher as a result of his efforts. So Crash, I don't know if you want to just add to that. What would happen if Stink just went off the rails on you?
Hopefully that won't happen. That's a really hard thing, right? So I think you have to, as an alliance, take the sort of attitude that the team comes first and it's bigger than any one player. I think that's a really hard thing to take. But, I mean, if Stink went off the rails, I would be harassing him in game before making any decisions as to what would happen. But the reality is that if he permanently changed his play style, he would have to go his own way.
Yeah, so...
Right. But I think a lot of that's about leadership, though, and saying it the right example.
So,
and I just say right now, for example, in our alliance, I'm a believer in that the leadership kind of has to have a certain size. That would be bigger than smaller in terms of levels, so they can and lead by sort of example that way.
Yeah. So.
Do you look for people who clearly show kind of leadership capability? And maybe that's a question if Waz is back on. How do you recognize somebody who has somehow has influence over the group as a leader versus somebody who's just higher power?
Actually, you find out from it just for observation, and you can have people you see in the dynamics in ACs in Alliance chat. You see in the dynamics and how people either set up, help other people, and you can see the people who just kind of through their presence in the alliance lead other people. And those are the people you generally pick up as leaders. Is you kind of just weed it out, you kind of feel it out, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a power level, but it's one of those things you almost just see it. You just kind of see it.
And is that because of your, personal experience, where you're able to recognize that, or is it time in the game, or is it some combination where you see
real life
dynamic
is training and developing leaders for the military, and so it comes a lot from my real life.
So now I just want to take a second. I think I would be doing all of Server 22 an injustice if I didn't ask NotYourStar this question. Went on the topic of managing maybe bigger players or wild cards. NotYourStar, you have dealt with some of the biggest wild cards on the servers. Now, is there anything any alliances can do to make you kick those players? And do you want to just talk a little bit about that and managing some real big personalities?
Well, it all, I think it all comes down to what exactly did they do. I mean, you know, somebody's always going to be unhappy about something that somebody does. That's just human nature. So, I mean, you know, if you got somebody that's, you know, wishing death, let's say, on somebody, that's kind of a big deal. That, you know, would be something that, you know, would definitely have to be looked into and something would have to be done about. But I mean, you know, for the most part, you know, people are unhappy because, you know, for whatever reason, this guy dropped, you know, their alliance to go hit somebody that they weren't supposed to, then comes back, and now you're dealing with, you know, that kind of fallout because now this person's mad. I mean, it's real hard to say, you know, depending on, you know, what the actual issue is. I mean, a lot of issues can be worked through. Some of them are, you know, pretty extreme. So I just, you know, basically take them as they come.
Sure, definitely. Now, Crashem, have you had any experience with that when you've been recruiting players, they join your alliance, and then all of a sudden you'll get a PM from somebody in game like, hey, this guy said this, or this guy did this and this. Have you had to deal with that?
Yeah, of course. We've definitely had that happen a few times. And the reality is when someone comes into the alliance, a lot of times they don't understand some of the culture, and that's both inside and out of the alliance. So, you know, you give everyone a sort of a grace period to sort of adjust and to pick up the clues, the cultural clues on how things are done. But I've definitely asked people to leave. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a game, and people want to have fun. So it's important for not only the alliance to find the right players, but for the players to find the right alliance for them.
So you brought up an interesting comment about culture, and is the culture that you have in your alliance is the tone for that set by you or the Commodores? It kind of in collusion is a wrong coordination is a better word than collusion, or is it organically developed by the players that you have on the team, or both?
Sorry, was that directed at me, Potato? So I would say it's mostly the latter, organically developed by who happens to play, who happens to be the most active, and who's playing. But there's certain sort of hard rules, at least in my case, that we have, but those are kind of few and far between, and I'd sort of let it happen organically. I think other alliances are a little bit different. I recently got lectured by another Commodore about how she was in control of her alliance and how every single player acted, which was surprising to me.
So, Waz, do you have comments on that about, you know, does the leadership set the culture, or does it happen organically?
Because if you have leadership that is doing things outside of it really causes a lot of disruption. So the leadership kind of leads the way with the culture, but it has to be accepted by the rank and file of the alliance. And if it's not something to buy into, or if you don't do things to police things that are far outside the culture is just going to go where it's going to go. And it is both led from the front, but also needs to be supported.
So, and to your point, let's talk about policing a little bit. How important is that, or how active or how stringent does that have to be, Waz, when it comes to matching up the enforcement with the culture that you want to create? And we'll toss it over to Crash after you answer, and then get NotYourStar's opinion on it also with a totally different idea, right?
Deal with is stuff that you have tacitly approved through your silence. And so anything that comes up that is counter your culture or counter your rules needs to be dealt with in some way. Now, that can just be a talking to the individual, finding out what's going on, all the way up to kicking the person out of the alliance, especially if it's really egregious, the violation that occurs. Because anything you don't deal with is something you've approved by not.
Crash, your thoughts?
Someone agree with that. But I do agree with the fact that either you deal with it or you don't. But I think some of this is where the maybe leadership led culture. I tend to handle everything via PMs, keep it out of Alliance chat, and that's sort of something I encourage. If that people have disputes with each other, to sort of talk to each other in PMs, to keep Alliance chat sort of clear and keep it fun. So I think that, but I just, every alliance is going to, I don't think there's a right formula for anything, but I think that it's important for everyone, for leadership to set the right tone by their action.
So NotYourStar, being kind of a leader, a long-term leader of an alliance that effectively has no rules.
I mean,
What are your
you
thoughts
definitely do have to do some policing. I do agree with any kind of disputes being in PMs and not out in the open, like on the Alliance Discord or in the AC, which goes back to one of our rules of having no drama. I mean, for the most part, most people are adults. They can handle some situations without get to it. Say one thing or step in when they can't come to an agreement to kind of meet to issue. So I mean, a lot of the times the other players in the alliance will actually kind of set the tone of if this person fits or this or whatever the issue may be. And a lot of the times the players themselves will decide hey, we want to do this or we want to do that, and then I support their decision of what they choose far as how the alliance itself progresses. I mean, I don't tell them they have to play a certain way. They naturally kind of it just kind of organically grows, like Cass said.
Hey, this is a great time for us to hear from our sponsor, Trumworf's Klingon Taco Palace. Here you go, Trum.
Romulans, countrymen, lend me your universal translators. Does it suck mining all the time? Does it suck getting hit by Darth Chainsaw? Does it suck getting your base wiped out by the notorious Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Potato? Does it suck at sucking? Well, if you're ever on server 34, please stop by Lollipops for all your sucker needs. Again, this was a gratuitous plug for server 34, and it does not necessarily represent Trumworf's on Taco Palace on server 22. Hello, friends. Welcome to your daily dose of tacos. But before I get to the menu, I want to thank all those well-wishers out there who showed lots of love and compassion for Mama Sophia. Many of you wanted to know more about her untimely demise, so I'm going to give you a little brief story. Well, it was a fateful day about a month ago. Mama Sophia was working on her special Muds Menudo when NGNS attacked. It was a terrible situation. I came at highest warp possible. That's roughly 35 miles an hour per power truck. It was then that I came upon the utter devastation. I made my way into the wreckage and found Mama Sophia lying there with her secret recipe book in her lifeless hands. Mama Sophia, you will be remembered with honor. Well, I'm not quite dead yet. Yes, you will feed the greatest heroes in Stovokor. No, really, I'm feeling much better. Okay. Well, it was then I took the recipe book from her now lifeless hands telling you, it was mine. It was all the time. It was mine. Mine, all mine. Sorry. Anyway, so don't judge me. I am Klingon. So that ends the story of Mama Sophia. Actually, if you ask me, the patak should have shielded. But look, taco pieces. Num, 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 num. Now, here are some of this week's specials. So let's talk about it. Get it? Taco about it. Silence. Tacos al con, simply superior in every way. Elote gorn corn, mud menudo. Yeah, Mama Sophia's secret recipes. If you ask what it is, I'll say nacho business. Get it? Nacho business. Man, this is a tough crowd today. We also have target chicken nachos. But you know what? I dream of a world where chickens can cross the road without their mothers. But while we're here, why did the Klingon cross the road? Well, his knife was stuck in the chicken. Baha! Ooh, silence. Sulu salsa. Be careful with this one because you never know what's inside. Oh my. Use quesadillas because humans are basically chips and guacamole. Targ pulled pork. Oh my God, please don't get 16 started. This is a family restaurant, okay? Don't forget our desserts, Sullivan cinnamon rolls, nice ever-chasing way. Now, on the adult side, our drink specials for this week are Jenna cider. But be careful not to drink too much of Jenna cider. You might end up kicking over. We also have Angorian Frost Hurricanes, Blood Orange Margaritas, Cardassian Dark Beers. And for you non-drinkers, we have JLP Cola, Diet JLP, JLP Zero, Caffeine-Free JLP, and Jolt JLP. Quite literally a different cola for every JLP. But you know what? I got some smack with JLP this week, and I might be changing vendors, so stay tuned. Now, important news. Saturday at 1 Galactic time, we are pleased to welcome Psycho Sally, who will be teaching free line dancing lessons. I said it again, free line dancing lessons. So come on. Our line dancing music will be a very special, soulful, beautiful, heartfelt dedication to Klingon opera. And as a matter of fact, here's a sample. Mark Arena. Mark Arena. De la Cuerpo Alegría. Mark Arena. Oh, tu cuerpo, el adoro, alegría, casa buena. De la tu cuerpo, alegría, Macarena, hey, Macarena. Yes, I did go there. It's line dancing. What the hell did you expect? Now, the winner of the line dancing competition will have a free dinner for two for Trumworf, and all other contestants will be with pain sticks. Now, Saturday nights, rock music entertainment. Brutalica, straight off their Fade to Dishonor tour of Romulans. And here are some songs that you can expect from them. Nothing Else Matters But Honor. Enter the Dagger, From Whom the Blood Flows. Sad, but funny. The Unforgiven. The Unforgiven 2, Death Becomes You. The Unforgiven 3, Okay, Now I'm Pissed and Generations Will Perish. And not to forget, The Unforgiven 4, just another unnecessary sequel. So, tickets on sale at the... Yeah, hold on. Yes, dear. Yes, I'm going to mow the yard. I will mow it later. And I will take out the garbage. Yes, dear. Garbage will get out. No, I'm not playing Star Trek. I'm doing taxes. Okay? Oh, okay. Mama Sophia is coming for dinner. Oh, boy. No, I'm not being sarcastic. I love Mama Sophia. Love her like poison ivy. Anyway, okay, dear, kiss, goodbye. I'll be right down. Christ. Oh shit! Is this thing on? Yeah, woman. Give me my dinner, and don't make me kick Uranus. Uranus. Oh, Klingons are cool. Anyways, tickets on sale at Taco Truck nearest you. Well, it's time for me to wrap it up, friends. But remember, it's just a game. Don't worry. Be happy. Make tacos, not war. And all are welcome at Trumworf sitting on Taco Palace. But honor compels me to say that my wife Lupita approved of this message. Kapla.
Hey, great to have you on, Trump. Thanks again for being our sponsor, and we'll see you on the next episode. Go ahead.
Into in the natural progression of alliances, and we wouldn't be able to have a discussion on alliance dynamics without talking about, you know, the quote unquote rise and fall of different alliances, because at least in my experience on our server, the only alliance that is an original alliance is NotYourStar's alliance, which is JLP. Yes, we do have another alliance on our server which has the original tag, which was Ghost, but they don't even have the same name anymore. They're Crazy Ghosts. They're a very different alliance than they used to be. But what causes that rise and fall of alliances? Because right now, currently, the number 1 and number 2 in power on our server, they're relatively new alliances in the sense that they're only a few months old. Now, Wild, do you want to talk a little bit about that, of just what makes alliances rise and fall? Because from the outside looking in, it looks like all the alliance quote unquote ROEs are exactly the same.
Well, it's almost entirely to the culture. Alliances hold together as long as the people that are in the alliance want to be there and want to be with the people that are in there. And then when we start getting people who are being divisive inside alliance chat, or they want to go do one thing when the rest of the people don't want to do other things, that's where you start pulling these alliances apart. Kaz was built from the breakup of a couple alliances, and those big players with similar mindsets came together. Same thing with NGNS. It was, big players coming out of other alliances due to big kind of disputes and coming together with other people, like-minded people, to build those alliances. With the focus of trying to build that culture, kind of build that leadership, build a group that people want to be in and work towards, kind of stuff. And go ahead.
Sorry. So I think there's that very famous line is, in order, why learning history is so important is importance of learning history is so you don't repeat those mistakes. Now, you said that those alliances come from other big alliances that broke up. Do you want to just talk a little bit about maybe an example that you could think of that was the downfall of alliances so others know not to make that same mistake?
There was the big merger. So in the beginning of our server, there were 2 alliances, Federation and Ghost, and they were like the big player alliances. And when we were developing me and Az, they were like, light years ahead of where we are when it came to power. But at one point, Kaz formed. And Kaz, through building the kind of the culture and building the people who want to work together, were starting to beat Fed and beating Ghost in the events, to the point where they'd taken players from those alliances. And at one point, Ghost and Fed tried to merge, G-Fed. And that just caused a big mismatch in the culture, to the point where a lot of players from Ghost and Fed who had like mind but didn't like where it was going, they jumped out and they formed NGNS. And this is in that group of people, we want to be together, we want to work towards events, we want to work together. And they built up from about 20, 30 people to a 70 person, they built up organically, bringing people in and developed them.
Yeah, so Potato, you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I know you've been in the background for some of these breakups. At least you've been a fly on the wall for a lot of them and seen them take place. Do you want to talk, like, what are the big downfalls that alliances should look out for? Because this podcast should try to be helpful to not make some huge mistakes.
Yeah, like to Waz's point, it's all about the culture. 100%. It's about the culture and the tone the leadership of the alliance sets and what their standards are, and not just building an alliance to compete in events, because you're going to end up with controversy there, right? And people wanting to do whatever they want to do, but they all want to be part of a winning alliance. But it's important, and I will say, what Waz was part of, instrumental in creating Kaz, and NGNS both. I mean, the 2 top alliances on server 22, he was critical in developing those alliances and setting the tone and the culture. And the reason I was part of those was because of my relationship with him and knowing where he wanted to go. On the other hand, there were some along the way, some sticking points where, as the culture developed organically, it shifted from what we wanted to do from the outset to something a little more along the lines of, in my opinion, protect miners at all cost. And this is a mining alliance geared towards free-to-play players to place in events. And that wasn't my thing. I'm not saying they were wrong. I am just saying it didn't fit my style. So that's where I'm at, why I'm at where I'm at now. But I think at the outset of creating that culture and creating that alliance, and both of those alliances, Kaz and GNS, have done well as a result of the foundation that Waz built. And then, it drifts a little bit, right? Over time, as players get stronger, as servers develop, as there's different social dynamic and the culture changes a little bit. So you would expect them to shift, or people to shift around a little bit here and there based on pressure. But I've personally been very lucky to be part of some really good alliances on 2 servers.
Because I know you've experienced a lot of people who've been frustrated with their alliances, who have come in and joined your alliance because you do not have as many rules. Now, what would you say just to some of the people listening who would say all players on this game, and especially on our server, want to follow some sort of rules of engagement, but yet you've managed to lead an alliance with multiple sister alliances with over 400 players at one point. Do you want to just talk about what has your experience been when you've seen the complaints that new players come in talking about their own alliance?
Well, most of it boils down to the politics of it. People getting told that they can't do this, they can't do that. A lot of people, they invest a lot of time, money, energy into building their accounts, and for somebody to come in and say, well, you have to do this, but you can't do this, and a lot of people get tired of that. And I think the power struggle with a lot of the alliances that have came and gone with, trying to put, too much pressure and too much, rules and regulations in place on the players themselves who don't really want that. I think that was, a big problem with a lot of alliances.
So what have you seen on your server, Crashem? I haven't been there all that long, but have you seen that same dynamic of people shifting around, alliances come and fall, or rise and fall, and shifting kind of who's in and who's out, and what their priorities are?
Yeah. So just to be clear, our alliance. We had the original tags and the original things. We're, like said, we more, come up through the ranks than a bunch of top players coming together. So we're a little bit different. But if you look at in our server, it's mostly the top alliances are of that sort, of the sort of top players coming together for one reason or another. But typically, I put it into 2 categories. Either it's the external pressure, wars between them that cause them to fall, or it's internal pressure, differences in opinions between players and so on that cause that. I think in our server, it's mostly been external pressures, too much fighting among certain people, causing dissatisfaction.
So that brings up a great point, and I'd like to hear from Crash and Waz and NotYourStar on this, all 3. How do you deal with when you get internal bickering happening? right? And what causes it? How do you deal with it? And how do you resolve it when it's people on your own alliance that are peeing on each other?
It depends. What
Waz, do you want to
conflict
jump on that one first?
If is it driven by just one individual, or is it like actually a genuine issue between two different people? Again, this is one of those things you want to try to either take care of in PM or get like a Discord group chat with the ones and try to figure out what the issue is. The best thing you want to try to do is try to work it out, or try to give some distance inside the alliance so those two don't interact that same way. But if it gets to the point where it's getting really nasty language, people doing really crazy stuff, sometimes the boot is the only answer for one or both of the individuals.
So, NotYourStar, what's your thought on that,
a lot of that.
The internal bickering?
I mean, I can't say that it hasn't, in the past happened, once or twice. But like Waz said, it really depends on, what the nature of the problem is. A lot of times, it's something simple that can be resolved relatively easy with, with a little bit of effort. So, for the most part, with our no drama policy, the guys are always been really good about, working together and not really having those sorts of issues.
People are people, and people are different.
Crash, your thoughts?
So I think that you're going to see some level of conflict. Hopefully, like I said, with setting up a certain environment that stays out of sort of the group dynamic. I mean, our worst case scenario that we've had is that I essentially told both players to block each other and ignore each other. It got to that point, but I hate to say it. If it went any further, I would have to be forced to kick one or the other. But I mean, a lot of those conflicts have to do with personalities and, I don't know, outside of the game viewpoints. And I tend to try to discourage that being either discussed or fought over inside the game.
Sure. Now, I want to take a second right here, and NotYourStar, I'm going to put you on a little bit of a spot right now, because Crash did mention a little bit ago just talking about wars. Now, I think me and you agree on a lot of things within game. The only thing I think me and you maybe disagree on a little bit are wars, because JLP's policy is we have never been to war, never once. Constantly alliances are going to war with us, but we've never been to war. I've always wanted to go to war because I want to see that dynamic. Now, what's your thought when it comes to wars?
Well, I mean, people on the server, it doesn't matter what alliance you are or who you are. I mean, people are gonna attack you. I mean, it's a PvP based game, and I think a lot of people kind of forget that. So for whatever reason, as minute as that reason might be, whether you have a certain tag or buddy or all creates a type of a conflict. Individual players, different alliances, or with entire alliances themselves. So if you were to say, we're going to war over this, go to war over that, I mean, basically in a nonstop war all the time.
Yeah. So, just to talk wars, in my experiences, at least from our server and our alliance, we've had a lot of different alliances spend a lot of time joining forces and going to war with us. And it's always just been frustrating to me because I've always wanted to participate in those wars, but I've never been able to because JLP doesn't declare wars on anyone. So there really is no war. And I've always found it pretty much counter.
Johnny, sorry, I got to interrupt you here. I would say, and I'm just going to throw it out there, you haven't participated in the wars because your
kind of
are
war
just
you
too
want to
weak.
go to. You could go in a minor war, and I think I'll win that 9 times out of 10. But to kind of talk more about wars too, is I've always found them counterintuitive too, that you're going to go after an entire alliance over the actions of a few. Now, WildWazoo, I know me and you talking about this podcast beforehand, we had very different opinions on targeting alliances over the actions of a few. Now, do you want to talk about that? And I want to hear like your thought process for JLP. We have a lot of members who follow rules of engagement. They have less than 200 PvP kills, like a 0.1 kill death. Where do you find the justification in attacking those people when alliances go to war with us, instead of the actual person doing the quote unquote issues?
So I don't know who that's directed to first, but this is WildWazoo. I'll go first. So it's been the policy like NGNS and CAS is we target individuals, not alliances, for actions of individuals. It's because it's not productive to go after a whole alliance for the actions of individuals, because that just gets that other alliance going after our stuff the same way. Now, there may be times where we declare war, and there's, CAS has been in a war from time to time, but wars are very costly when it comes in terms of progression. They cost resources, they cost speed ups. And so if you're going to go to war over something, it's something there needs to be a real thought process about what is the cost benefit of this war. But yeah, in general, like for the alliances I'm in, the policy is to go after individuals, not.
Now, what about you, Crash?
Crash,
I go
what do you
after
think about that? Right. Yeah.
And the reason is it's you have to put if the individual's out of line, it's easier to put pressure on the alliance to stop. We haven't been in that many wars. Our wars tend to be short and sweet. But I mean, there's a reason why we're number 1 power, or number 2 power destroyed, or number 1 power destroyed as a row alliance. We'll enforce in a heavy way any kind of perceived violations if we feel that way.
Well, I would add, that's part of the reason that on server 22 I'm in a solo alliance is my personal belief, right? And I don't want to project this on anybody else, is if you're part of an alliance and you're getting the benefits of that alliance from a reward standpoint, an event standpoint, then you represent the alliance you're part of. And if you deviate from that, well, you represent your alliance, and I'm going to go after everybody in your alliance for a limited time period, typically. But that's my personal belief. Rather than trying to look for one individual, I can just flag them now and hit everybody, right? I can hit all of JLP, for example, and not because I hate them, but it sort of gives me a reason to go have some fun in the game or some other thing. And I know I think Waz, you and I don't agree on that point for sure. It's just the way I play versus what tone you're setting for the culture for the alliance you're in.
We'll contact the admiral and see if we get a reply. And if it goes beyond that, well, that's a decision of the alliance if we want to take it any further. Because again, wars are costly, and so it's one of those things that you need to be sure that the cost and the benefit match up.
Yeah, to the entire team, right? I mean, you're looking at when you talk about your alliance, you're talking about 75 or 72 or 70 players, right? Whatever it is right now. What's the greater benefit to the group rather than one individual just saying, I'm done with these guys, I'm going to go hit them all? Which to be perfectly honest, That's why I'm in a solo alliance, is because I was doing stuff where, 70
Yeah,
other
so
members
What I've also
especially
saw, we
got the
in our
repercussions from it.
alliance on our Discord, we have a love letters group, and I'm constantly amazed at how many love letters other members of my alliance get from alliances that are quote unquote at war with us, asking, "Hey, why did you hit my ship?" Even though their alliance has openly declared war on us. I don't know if that's an internal communication between alliances or if that's just people thinking they could play outside of that war. Now, NotYourStar, you've seen a lot of those PMs. What has your experience been with just the lack of communications in other alliances?
A lot. I mean, it's really kind of hard to put a finger on it, because there's a lot of people from other alliances who will speak out of, say, frustration or something, and tend to try to speak for their whole alliance, which compounds the problem of what actually might have been. So I think a lot of alliances, there's a part of the group that kind of wants to, say the war aspect of it, and then there's the other part of the group that, kind of would rather stay out of it, kind of, if you don't mess with me, I won't mess with you type of deal. And I don't think that gets conveyed to, from other people, entirely. It's kind of a, it's either you're in or you're out type deal. And I don't think a lot of some of the other alliances we've had to deal with, I don't think it was ever really, set out that way.
So we're kind of pushing maybe the limits of what we want for people to digest. And so I'll kind of throw the question out to everybody, and we'll start with Crashem. As an alliance leader of a big alliance, what's your best advice for people leading or wanting to be part of a competitive alliance?
Let's just.
Yeah, we lost Crashem when he tried.
So
So
the
Wes,
biggest
do you
thing
want
in
to
leading
take the
a big
question
alliance
while Crash comes
should-
back in?
is you want to make sure that what you want your alliance to do is something that you're doing. You show by your example. You kind of lead the front when it comes to event performance. You help them out. You help them out with raiding. You help them out with finding nodes. Engagement, that positive engagement is what's the most important thing for leadership.
Cool. NotYourStar, do you want to jump in, and then we'll go back to Crashem?
Points. We're always, all the guys in the alliance, myself, I'm always happy to crack a base for somebody who needs a bit of res or, whatever. And it's being that aspect of, somebody can post something in the alliance chat like, hey, I need help with this, or, this and that. And, one of us will jump right on it and be like, here, I'll be there in a couple of just that whole, kind of keeping that whole dynamic going is, always real good.
So Crash, I don't know if you heard the whole question about your best advice for leading and managing an alliance. Do you want to, what would be your summary of here's how to do it the right way?
You have to live what you want the alliance to be. So it's very important for the leadership to do that. I think that early on, you want to grow. It's important to strike your own identity, whatever that is. It could be, that could be a goal-based identity, or it could just be an identity of one sort or the other, so that players who like that identity will flock to you, as opposed to just being, we're just an alliance of good guys or bad guys or whatever. Try to sort of be a little more detailed in terms of like, you know, what your attitude is and what you represent. I think that makes it easier to sort of grow and get the right kind of players and that sort of thing. And then I will say one last thing is that realizing leadership in terms of the calls of the leader being the most important is, you know, all around these wars and all the other stuff. That is where like sort of you have as a alliance leader or as a alliance leadership have more control of what happens there.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a hypothetical out there, right? I'm new to the game. I'm level 15, and I've decided I want to start my own alliance. How come nobody's joining my alliance, and why can't I compete in the top 10? Like, what do I need to do different today to make that happen? If I'm a good leader and I want to make an alliance, you know, 18 months into the game, and I'm level 15, what do I do?
All right, recruiting. That's all.
So, Crash, I'll start with you.
Someone tear through the alliances and see if you know, we grew that way, but tear through existing alliances and see if there's any like live players and dead alliances. And I think this is a social game, and people at the end of the day would prefer to play in a nice group. I think that a lot of people are not even aware of it, that such a thing exists. So, like, I would say a significant portion of our early players were from sort of dead alliances. The only active player, the 1 of 3 active players in that alliance.
I mean, I would agree too. I mean,
NotYourStar, what do you think?
If you're 18 months into a game and you're new to the game, you don't really know anybody, you're gonna have a real tough time. A lot of people have already established, who had been in the game, have already established friendships, and you know, alliances have already kind of established, and people are kind of, you know, more or less, you know, settled into where they're at. You know, one of the best ways is going through all the lower alliances and, you know, finding, you know, players that are actually, you know, kind of there casually. And a lot of times you can get them to move over and they see that whole aspect of what an actual full alliance chat looks like. And, you know, they kind of grow from that and, you know, get more into the game that way. So that's a real good recruiting tactic for that. But as far as trying to be a level 15 new to the game, a small alliance, and trying to recruit the big players, that's probably not going to happen until you get to know a lot of people.
So if you're starting out as a 15 and you're trying to make an alliance, what's most important really
your
is
thoughts?
You need to be visible, you as a player. So you need to do well in the solo leaderboards. You need to interact with people through PMs, out in space, interacting with them. You need to brave Galaxy Chat and be a presence there. And once you're a known quantity, once you're a personality and people have seen you, you may be able to go get those people who are in dead alliances who want to do something and they want to interact with people. And that's how you start growing. And if you grab another personality like that, and once you get some personalities, you get a core group, and that's where you go to build.
That's a good point, right? You can't be just a guy who is, I'm level 15 and here I am and I don't interact with anybody and I don't know anybody and I really want my own alliance because I want to be the leader. It's not necessarily about wanting to be the leader. It's about demonstrating leadership. And if you guys want to weigh in on a little bit on what's it take to demonstrate leadership in your alliance?
Right now, you know, our alliance
Crash, maybe you start.
First started, right? So we are competitive in the top events, and so the standards are very high. I hate to say this, I'm level 37, 38. I don't forgot off the top of my head. I think 37. I hate to say this, it always helps to have the leadership being one of the big players, because if you're dependent on the other players to enforce your will, whatever we decide to do, that becomes a weird dynamic over time. So that's one. But again, it's just living what you preach, right? So if I sit there and I break bases, for example, I do what you do, Potato. I'll go into a system, I'll hit every base, and then I'll broadcast it throughout the entire alliance, and everyone's coming to loot. If I do that, you do that often enough, when those players get bigger, you'll just find that they tend to do the same thing. You know, break bases for other players and helpful and all that stuff. So living what you like others to live is the key thing. But I hate to say about the levels. If you want to be a top alliance, it's easier to lead from the front, where you can actually enforce your own your own will.
I don't.
Excellent.
I mean,
Not your star. What your thoughts?
And listening to your players is going to be, one of the key factors. Like, we're always posting raids and breaking bases for the lower guys, so they can build up and get stronger and all that stuff. And the alliance itself, the players are going to kind of set the tone for everything that happens. So if you're in there and you can show that you're willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with your smallest guy, and help them in any way that you can, if somebody asks that, hey, I need this, I need that, whatever, and you can be right there to help them with that. I mean, that's a lot of people are gonna feed off of that, and it's like, hey, yeah, let's help each other, and snowball from there.
Yeah. So Potato, we lost.
And Waz, your thoughts, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Johnny.
Oh,
yeah. So
we lost Waz. Oh, he's back. So Wes, what are your thoughts on that topic? And then we'll turn it back over to Johnny for kind of a last
really helping
question.
people develop. This game it's easy to play. You just kind of click on the red triangle and say kill it. But to really master it, there's a very high level of knowledge. Different crew combinations, what different ships do what, where's the best places to go hunt, that kind of stuff. And so there's a very, very high knowledge. And if you know a lot about the game, and you take these younger players and you help them develop, you help them, teach them how to crack bases, because there's a skill to that. If you teach the people how to do well in armadas, that's how you show leadership. It's helping others develop.
That's a great point. So Johnny, I'm gonna let you kind of ask
for the
maybe the final question.
Special. I'll ask you first,
and then we'll kind of wrap this up.
For those people out there listening to this podcast today, what do you hope that they took out of this?
Yeah, for me, even though I'm currently on server 22 in a solo alliance, the best thing you can do to help yourself progress through the game is be part of an active, fully engaged alliance with good leadership that matches the style of play that you want to play the game. And get involved, get known to them, and once you're part of them, well, then you gotta follow their rules, right? But there's some really, really strong leaders out there who know what they're doing and are really good at developing other players and following their rules, even if you don't like them. Is worthwhile to your own growth. That would be my recommendation. Get engaged in an active,
and I think on that point,
aggressive alliance
anybody would
that fits your
on
style.
that fact. So I think on that, we're gonna wrap up this podcast. I just want to take a second and thank all you guys for being a part of this. I know we're gonna finally give some voices behind a few of your names. I know people on your server and definitely within your alliances will be real appreciative that you took the time, and I hope everybody out there listening, took something out of this podcast and maybe something that they could even add to their own alliance.
Yeah, go be a leader and drive the alliance that you want to have. And if you're part of an alliance that doesn't fit your needs, go create your own, right? But truly go be a leader and take some of the points from, the people we've had on here, right? WildWazoo, Crashem, NotYourStar, they've been long time successful, well-respected leaders of alliances, either creating or managing or leading for over a year. And it's pretty impressive to hear from them on their style and what it takes to be great, right? To be in that top
Awesome.
3
And
or
on
top
that
5
note,
or top 10
on behalf of
leaderboard,
AZPotato and Johnny
on
Chainsaw,
events.
we'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to episode 5 of our podcast series entitled Alliance Dynamics. Drop a like, subscribe, leave a comment. Is there any episode ideas you'd like to hear on the future? And a special thank you to all of our guests today. All right, there, Galaxy. Stay safe.
Thank you.